Do you ever get discouraged by the headlines? Do you ever get worried about the direction the country is headed? Do you ever get discouraged with your own failures and the lack of progress in your own spiritual life? Do you ever get concerned about the young people of today? I know I do at times. Well, what can you do about that discouragement? What can you do about that worry? What can you do about that concern? Well, you and I need to remember not to be transfixed by the TV, not to be hypnotized by the headlines, to get off the treadmill of tragedies that are breathlessly announced to us in the media daily, and remember the good things God is always doing. Like what, you may ask? Well, like this. I'm recording this here at church just an hour or so after our weekend services ended here. Did you know that this past weekend we baptized 23 people over our 3 services? Look at some of these faces. 23 people. 2 of them were brand new believers, and I mean brand new. 2 young men, 19 and 20, came up to me before the services and said, "Hey, I just accepted Christ. I want to be baptized." It was their first time ever at Twin Lakes Church. In their first service here, they've been baptized. Listen, I've been doing ministry a long time, and I cannot remember a year where this has happened on multiple occasions like it has this year, where people have come up to me at church and said things like, "Rene, I can't explain it, but God has called me to faith in Jesus. I wasn't raised Christian, but I'm showing up today because I want to be a follower of Jesus. How do I do that?" This has happened multiple times this year. One of the young women who was baptized this weekend, she came to faith after several years as an atheist. Another young man who was baptized this weekend dedicated his life to Christ after some time doing drugs. Another young man told me a few months ago, he said, "I was depressed and I realized my worldview had nothing to offer me in my despair over my own moral failures." He said, I had heard about Jesus, so I got a Bible, started reading the Gospels, and became convinced this is the way, this is the truth, this is the life. And he put his faith in Jesus Christ just by reading some Bible he got, never been to a church in his life. Then he Googled churches and Twin Lakes Church came up, so he decided to try it this weekend for the very first time, and he was baptized this weekend. I could tell you so many stories, one right after another. I've never seen anything like it. God is on the move. He really, really is. It reminds me of what Paul says in Colossians 1:6. All over the world, this gospel is producing fruit and growing, just as it has been doing among you since the day you heard it and truly understood the gospel of the grace of God. Because they also could have fallen into cynicism and despair. The early Christian movement was facing bigger obstacles than ever. Persecution was breaking out. There was disunity among the believers back then too. They could have focused on the failures. They could have been transfixed by the troubles. But Paul in that verse is trying to widen their perspective. He's saying, you need to tell yourself these true stories all over the world. The gospel is producing fruit and growing. So I hope you remember to give thanks to God every single day for what he's doing at Twin Lakes Church and all around the world and inside of you. Don't let your mind go down some pessimistic rabbit hole. You know, the realization that God is at work in you and around you, even if you can't see it, it'll change you. It'll change your attitude. It'll change what you think about. It'll change the kinds of conversations you have. It'll change the things you're interested in reading. It'll change your social media and news algorithms because it'll change what you click on. And notice one more thing. Paul says this gospel is producing fruit and growing. It's the gospel. Keep focused on the gospel. Keep communicating the gospel. The gospel is what people need. The gospel is what's effective. That means we don't have to get political in this church. We can resist distractions. It's the gospel that speaks to human souls. The good news that God loves the world so much that he gave his one and only son. So if you find yourself getting discouraged today, remember, God is at work. God is always at work, and he's always working for our good.